Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley with my co-host and daughter,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we've got a very interesting show today because we're going to be talking about to someone who's been through a tremendous amount of tragedy and has really transformed it through writing, right?
Absolutely. We're going to talk with Loanne Merrimon, like you said, and we're going to talk about how she transformed her grief through writing after the death of her daughter and her mother. And Loanne is the author of Celestial Conversations, and she's also a former host of the TV show Angels at Work.
All right. Well, welcome, Loanne.
Hi, Loanne.
Thank you so much, ladies, for inviting me. I am just so honored to be here. Your work is so important. Just to be part of it is really precious for me.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's wonderful to know you. I got to see you this summer at my place in Carmel, and we got to spend some time, which was great. Got to know you a little better. Well, you know, I was telling Heidi about what you've done with your book, and I wanted to talk at the very beginning about your foreword, because you had a wonderful psychologist write the foreword, and being in the psychology world, he kind of normalized what you're going to be talking about as far as celestial conversations. And I reminded Heidi that as therapists, we often do the empty chair thing, right, Heidi?
Right, the Gestalt therapy, the empty chair technique, where you have an empty chair, for those of you out there that don't know what this is, and then you might say, you know, Loanne, would you please talk to your mom? What would you say to your mom right now if she was here?
Right. And then you have them even sometimes sit over in the empty chair, and then they're your mother, and they're talking to you, and then you reprocess it with the therapist. That's a very old technique. It's probably 50 or 60 years old, and people are still using it because it's successful. Right. Okay, so talk about your process, Loanne, in connection with that.
Well, it's not that much different, really, except I wasn't trained to do it. It just happened for me. I had a mother who was not very communicative, and we had a lot of unfinished business when she passed. As much as I have taught healing work and meditation, and I've helped other people, somehow I missed my mother. Could not help my mother. So
and you were doing that before your mother died.
Oh, 30 years.
You did Reiki.
I'm a Reiki master. I've taught meditation. I've taught Louise Hay work. I've done all the healing kind of work that I needed for myself, and then it translated into workshops and things for other people. But my mom was very skeptical about all those things, and so she was a little bit put off by them, and we were not able to find the connection in that arena, although we found them in many other ways. My big issue was that we didn't find the connection at a personal level. I was her only daughter, and there was so many things that she neglected to mention, or she didn't tell me, or she was suspicious about.
She pulled some dirty tricks on you too, as I read your book, like writing you out of the will and then writing you back in, and you didn't never know that she ever wrote you out or why.
No, she did a lot of things that it was like, really? But at her stage of life, she would use this mantra, I don't really know why, dear. And no matter what I said, that's how it came out. So up until the very day she died, I was still, you know, bringing people in to see if we could find a way to talk, and it never worked out.
And by the way, I just want to say your mother was a pretty dynamic person. It's not this little milquetoast person. I mean, she figured out how to do investments after your dad died, and
she was good at investments,
and was very successful. So it wasn't.
It was just this intimacy thing that was her bugaboo, you know. And of course, the only thing that I wanted, having been the only daughter. But what she gave me was this tremendous open door to the other side. The day she died, I was with her when I was called to her bedside, and the hospice nurse told me she was passing, and I sat with her. Oh, I don't know how many hours. And in the process, I know you've heard this from other people, she was looking up in the upper left-hand corner of the room, and she kept looking up there and mumbling things. She couldn't seem to talk, but she shook like she was a Catholic who was divorced at a time when that was not acceptable. And she was so afraid of the get you God, you know. So I sat next to her, and in the process of watching her pass, she at one point sat up and just at a 45-degree angle looked up at this corner of the room.
And she had not been happy, and she was screaming and yelling before this, right?
She was shaking from head to foot, just terrified, and everyone knew it. Everyone in the whole place knew it. But she went, oh, 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 and every wrinkle on her face disappeared in front of my eyes.
That's amazing.
It was, And I remember reaching over thinking she's going to fall out of bed, and she just lay down and died.
That's amazing. So she was
Like
looking
that.
at something or someone.
Oh, you bet. And she was trying
That's
to
incredible.
say, and of course I was like, wait a minute, come back, I want to know what happened
Yeah.
here, you know. And so in the process of rewinding the movie and trying to figure out what was it she was trying to show me or tell me, I was talking with hospice people. I was a hospice volunteer for a while, and they said, why don't you just journal about it? Now, I am a metaphysical, comfortable person, even though I'm Catholic, and so I do know people have had the opportunity to reach to the other side, but they were always like mediums or saints or somebody important, and I wasn't any of those things. But I did want to know, and I thought, I wonder, my mother was a writer, I wonder if I tried to reach her through writing, she would be able to reach back. Did I tell anyone? Not on your life. I didn't. I was afraid to be thrown out of the church. I was really terrified to tell even my husband. But one day I sat down and I had this journal, and I decided that I would say a prayer because it was a holy moment for me. If it worked, it would be the best thing ever. And then I would meditate, and I had been a meditator for many years, and then I would write a letter from the heart to my mom. And that's what I did. I got quite to the end of this little letter that I had written, and the phone rang. And I put the pen down, and I thought, oh, I wonder. So the next day, I took the phone off the hook, and I did the same prayer, meditation, and I wrote, Dear Loanne. And what was so interesting about that for me was that I wrote it exactly the way my mother wrote it for 50 years.
Wow.
I write L-O-A-N, and she had always written L-O-A-N-N-E, and I knew there was a chill
With
in
no
my...
space in between.
No space.
Okay.
And I just could feel something very different. So I continued to write the words that came to my mind. And what was happening is my mother was saying in these words that she was so glad that I finally found a way to reach her, because my criticism, my guilt, my resentment, my negativity was in the way of her trying to get through to me.
Okay.
This was still my mother, of course,
right.
you know, right? But what I realized is that we had found something that would work for us. And I wrote down everything she said, including the fact that transpersonal communication was possible. So I continued to do this.
And you didn't tell anybody about it. I remember you telling me about it. No, I mean, I read it in the book, Celestial.
I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare have told.
Celestial Conversations. Very good book. And you didn't tell anybody, and then you finally told your son and
I
or your
finally
family
told
and
my husband, after he said to me, what are you doing? He said, you're not talking about your mom the way you used to.
Wow.
And I
You
said,
used
well,
to talk about her in a negative way?
well, yeah, you know, why did she toss me out of the will? Why did she do
How
these
far out
things?
were you when this happened?
That was a year later.
Okay.
A year later.
So a year later, you'd been working. When did you start journaling?
A year later.
Okay, so it was a whole year later.
Yeah.
That's important because I know, our loss, parent loss is one of the number one things that people come to our site for.
Yes.
And which is very interesting because there's a lot of angst, a lot going on when you lose a parent, particularly a mother.
Yes.
And that anger and
I'm also thinking for Loanne, and you know, you've never been on this earth without your mother.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, there you are without your mother, and there was a lot of unfinished business.
Right.
That's what I call it, unfinished business. And I really felt that there could be a way to do it, but I never found it while she was alive. But she kept giving me information. I did this every day for 5 months, and I would get information like the fact that she was on 28 medications.
Wow.
I never knew that. She didn't live near me, and so there were things I could check, and things that gave me the feeling like, oh, of course she was cranky. I mean, who wouldn't be if you were in that kind of environment? And so I would find myself letting go of that stuff that I had on, and as I let go, I was feeling lighter, and I was feeling like we were finally getting to that place that I wanted when she was alive. But 5 months almost to the day after I started, I was in England, and while I was in England,
you were doing a writing.
Doing a writing course.
And you got a call.
I got a call. I called home, actually. I was having such a good time. It was the world of Camelot, and oh, I loved it. And when I called home, my daughter said to me, you got to come home, Cyndi is dead.
And how many kids do you have?
I have 6.
And Cyndi was your daughter?
She was our daughter, yes.
And what age was she in the line of 6?
She was the second child. She was almost 40.
Okay.
It was an out-of-body experience, as it is for any parent who loses a child. You know that. I couldn't believe it because she had an autistic child who took every ounce of breath she had, and she must have said 1,000 times, "I have to live a long time to take care of Ryan." So it made no sense. The long and the short of it is, when I got home and we were not allowed to get the information we needed because Cyndi was right on the verge of a very difficult divorce, I wrote to my mother.
Oh, wow.
I said, "You got to tell me," and what every mother says when they lose a child, "Is she okay? What happened? Is she all right?" And it was so comforting for me to have these words saying, we, and she named all the names of these different people are with her, helping her at this point in time, and she is all right. And this is what happened as she came through to the other side. We waited and we loved her through it. It was so beautiful from my point of view. And the truth. I could feel, you know, the way the Glenn Miller back of the neck thing is. So I didn't do any more than just feel like she was okay until the day of the funeral. And I just couldn't, I reflected on Rose Kennedy saying it's just not normal for a mother to bury her child. And I wrote to my mother saying, "What in the heck am I going to do? How do you do this?" And in the process of my mother's beautiful, beautiful words, which just caught my heart so beautifully, the energy all changed, and it was, "Mom, I got to talk to you. I need to tell you what happened." And it was surreal for me because the energy was different, the words were different, the fast writing happened so quickly that I read it realizing that it was Cyndi telling me, and top of what my mother was telling me is that I would not benefit from blaming others. And I was big time
blaming yourself.
Myself and a few others.
Because you left town too, you weren't there.
We were all gone, we were not there, and there were situations that I knew had happened that could have triggered this.
Well, she was involved in a really difficult divorce, you said, too.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, she had a lot of stressors.
She had a lot of stressors.
I mean, you're saying an autistic son, a horrible divorce. I mean, doesn't just
She was 2 weeks away from that divorce.
That's a lot.
Plus, she had been given a new medication, and every time I see that medication on television, I just...
Plus her grandmother had died.
Plus
she was on a medication, and we know some of the side effects. Suicide is a side effect to some medications.
That is...
Ideation, suicidal ideations.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So in the process of doing this, I found that I was helped by the fact that I knew that Cyndi could reach me, but I was also terrified because I thought I was hysterical, you know? But I kept going back to my mother, and she kept translating what was happening to Cyndi and how we could help get things settled among the family. And should I go to Japan? I was planning to go to Japan to be with my other daughter-in-law, who was having a baby and needed somebody there. So there were all these wonderful things that came through from my mom, but I was a little skeptical about going back to Cyndi at first. And then finally...
Well, I would guess you were a little cranky with her.
Well, I was like, yes, what the heck are you doing here? You know, what she was telling me was that she didn't recall putting the pills together. She didn't recall drinking the wine with the pills. She wasn't sure, and I think something that is really important, if there's anyone out there who has had a child who has committed suicide, and I know there are quite a few out there, one of the things that she said was that she didn't realize that she had passed at first.
Wow.
She said that she had this wonderful uncle, Father Arthur, who was my husband's brother, and he was talking to her and telling her and calming her and saying, "How are you doing and how's everything going?" And she was talking to her uncle, and then my mother was sitting behind my uncle, my brother-in-law, and she said, "All of a sudden I realized that they were both dead." And that I was dead.
And that I was
That's
dead.
amazing.
And she said, "I wanted to run right back, even though my life was terrible. I wanted to run back as quickly as possible." And that's where she says, "There's a wall. There's a wall, you know. You can't go back." And that, Mom, is where hell is. Because you can see what you've done, what has happened to the children, what has happened to the family members. And she said that was really hell on earth as far as I was concerned. But she also felt the love of everybody that was around her and the angels and so forth. It was really quite touching. Surreal. This is not my Catholic version of going to heaven, okay? I was like very different in my point of view. I had a different thought about it, but it helped me to know that she could reach me. So we began what I have now is 6 different journals with Cyndi, 6 with my mother, all of which
I think
helped
people
me.
are wondering, is she happy now?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Is she at peace, even though she can look back and see the pain that people are in here? Is she in a peaceful place?
She is determined to, as far as she's concerned, to help her children from where she was. She's helping them. She said she can come to them at night, she can talk to them, but because of the situation that was going on, they couldn't remember. There was so much negativity around them that once they woke up, they couldn't remember.
Oh, so
the
she
dreams.
would come in dream time.
She would come in their dream time. And so she felt strongly that she needed to balance her karma. And for that reason, talked about coming back again to the earth, which
Maybe reincarnation.
Yes, freaked me out totally, because again, this is blowing all of my barriers in all directions. However, she is peaceful with the fact that she knows that everything that happens to you, and she talks about the family. I asked her at one point, was this a karmic family? Because there was a lot of things that went on in that family. And she said, yes. She said, you know, when you come to the earth, we all come to teach and to learn. And we have a very definite idea of what's going to happen. And then there's reality.
Right.
And then she said, it's a little like getting married, Mom. She says, you think it's, you know, this is going to be happiness ever after, and then there's reality. And she said something that was very touching to me. She said, my husband and I forgot what we came for. And the older boy didn't really understand why we came, but she said, my autistic son knows exactly why we came and why he came. And she said, we were supposed to be at the cutting edge of autism and make a huge difference. This is 22 years ago. And she said, we just forgot. And that's the way it is in life sometimes. But the good news is that I get another chance. And that was, to me, really quite astounding. Not something I thought
So
about.
how long has it been since Cyndi's been gone?
She died 11 years ago, July 19th.
Okay. And I am hearing you now, it's been 11 years, but I dare say 11 years ago you weren't as philosophical about this whole thing.
No. And just as Dawn was saying earlier, that there is this shock value that happens that you just cannot, and you know it very well, that you can't wrap your head around the fact that they're not here for whatever reason. Mine was very traumatic, but for whatever reason that she is not here anymore. And I think the first few years, from the point of view of the first year, it was very, very troubling. The writing helped me because I wasn't accountable to anyone else.
Right.
I had a grief counselor for a couple of years. I was in my church group. I was in Compassionate Friends, which I just adore and I recommend to everyone because it was my nest. Everybody in that group knew what was going on. But then there was this journaling, this what Cyndi named it, Celestial Conversations, where we could talk about, well, what do I do for Ryan now that he doesn't know you're gone? He doesn't know what happened to you. How can I help? And to have very specific directions, and then to be able to try it out. You know, I had nobody to talk to about it.
Now, if I'm watching this show and I'm thinking, well, I don't know if I'll go as far as she's gone, but I like the idea to just try. What's the meditation that you do? How do I do it? Okay,
well, it's in the book, but it's very simple. All I did was I picked a prayer. My prayer is a unity prayer, that the light of God surrounds me, the love of God enfolds me, the power of God protects me, the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is. That's
pretty
my
beautiful.
prayer. But
Okay.
when I teach
and that's
it,
in the book if people want to see it. And you also teach.
I teach these things, but the other thing that I do is I meditate. When you have, the more busy you are and the more traumatized you are, the harder it is to clear your head.
Right.
And so I do the meditation, and then I take a pen to paper, I date it, and dating has become very important to me. And then I just write whatever comes. And when nothing comes, I stop and I read whatever it is.
And are there certain times of the day you sit down, or just is it the same time? Is it a different time? Or
I found it was best to do it at the same time. I tried
Okay.
different times.
Yeah.
Mornings for me are best. So I usually do it in the morning, and I don't do it every day, but for maybe 3 years I did it every single day. Like exercise or diet,
Yeah.
you know, the more you do it, the easier it comes. But what I found was the information that I was learning was also about myself. That I had to learn how to let go of all the negativity, and both my mother and my daughter constantly talk about the importance of forgiveness. And particularly the intention of forgiveness. I had a lot to forgive, a lot of things that were on my bucket list of things that they did to me, whatever. And as they were both talking about it from two different angles, saying it's so important to use forgiveness as your key to unconditional love. To forgive one thing at a time, one person at a time, one opportunity at a time, like you were taking barnacles off a boat. It helps you lighten up.
I like that for those people that say, well, I can't forgive all the things that have happened. Like you said, one tiny thing at a time.
One moment, one
Okay,
conversation,
that's good.
one thing that somebody said that was not right, and we had quite a list going on in those days. So
now
it
are you
works.
connected with her children?
One of them I am.
So there's still complications in your life.
Yes,
It's not
ma'am.
like, you know, but this is a wonderful piece for you to help with
It's
those
become my
complications.
life to learn how to forgive when someone offends you, when something happens, to learn to live your life. As Cyndi said to me, Mom, don't waste your time trying to figure things out or trying to justify what's going on or trying to make up for things. She said, just live your life as light as you can. Be the light. Be the light, and don't be the darkness. And then, typical daughter said, you don't have that much time anyway, so you better get going. You know? But for me, it's given me a whole new way of looking at what do we do with our time?
Yeah.
What do we do with our days?
Well, and a lot of people say we don't have time to meditate.
Oh.
You know, even if it's just a five minutes, it's interesting. It's like, I'm too busy.
Well, I was just talking to one of my own family members the other day. She has 2 little babies, and I was saying, you know, 20 minutes of meditation is worth 2 hours of physical rest to your body.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's a good point. 2 hours, 20 minutes.
Physical rest.
Wow.
2 hours of physical rest.
Yeah. So 5 minutes is half an hour.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What about the monkey mind, though? Right after you've had a child or a family member die, and your mind's just going.
Well, it's like
Bananas.
anything else, I think. It's like prayer, or it's like exercise or whatever. It's that Nike commercial. Just do it and see what happens. Because what happened to me was that 5 minutes turned into 7 minutes, turned into 10 minutes, and then pretty soon it was 20 minutes. And I had 6 kids at the time, under
Wow.
15.
So if you can find time, anybody can.
Well,
And there's no really excuse. I mean, so I was wondering, what happened to Ryan? I mean, here your daughter said, I can't leave because I have to live forever for Ryan. But she did leave, and he's still here, I take it.
yes, and
Okay.
it's part of my continued journey of forgiveness for reasons that no one quite understand. Cindy's husband, who took control of the children, decided that it was not good for the 2 boys to see any of Cindy's family. That means none of the children, none of the family members. I mentioned I have 6 kids. I have 13 grandchildren. Everybody was wiped. So part of my my Reiki experience as to send Reiki, to do work with the dreams, to do as much as I can possibly do without causing trauma and drama to the family unit, who's already been through quite a bit. We could have gone to court. We chose not to. They would have dragged those kids through the courts, and we wouldn't have done it. So the quick answer is that on the 18th birthday of the older one, he came to our house. We had a big fireplace and a rocking chair, and he sat in that rocking chair for I don't know how long and played all the music that he wrote for his mother.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It
That's
was
beautiful.
wonderful. And we've seen oodles of him since that time. We have not seen Ryan in 11 years, and I don't know exactly when we will, but I still send my, my thoughts to him of an awareness of the fact that this is a very powerful soul who knew exactly what he was doing when he came in, and he is going to be something I think our family will look up to as we get to know him. It will happen. It will happen someday.
Now talk about the things that you're doing now. You have an International Grief Council, and are you also teaching?
I am. I teach workshops on how to do this. I didn't need a workshop. Nobody really needs a workshop, but somehow when you're together with a large group of people and they're all doing the same thing, and there's a lot of power in that, I love it. And I've also started doing retreats. I've done some in California, as you know, and some in Texas and some in New Jersey. I also found these two wonderful ladies that I was telling you about earlier. One of them was born in Israel. One was born in India, and the three of us have come together to start what we call the International Grief Council, because we find that people in the United States particularly have a reluctance to talk about grief. They don't know how to talk about it. And so we have gone to different places to just talk about it, how we grew from our grief, and we all have, and you have. But somehow when in the dark nights, you just can't think that could possibly happen to you. We just want them to know it's possible.
So that there's hope after loss.
Yes, there is hope after loss. Exactly.
Now, where are you doing your upcoming workshops?
I have one coming up in Maniloking, New Jersey. I have one coming up at Georgian Court University, also in New Jersey. Third one at Brick. They're all in the next month or so. And then the International Grief Council is going out to New Mexico. We're doing a program in Santa Fe and a retreat in Taos. Great.
Now, how are people going to find you?
www.celestialconversations is on the website. That's the website.
All right.
And internationalgriefcouncil.org.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was delightful hearing you and hearing about your story.
Thank you,
Luann.
Thank you.
And we want to thank you for watching this show today, and we want to remind you to visit us at our website, opentohope.com. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours and our guests until you find your own, and God bless.